So I absolutely love podcasts. And when I first heard this podcast, Off Bounds, by today's guest, Paula Macaggi, I had to have her on the show. One of the things that I love about the podcast and also the perspective that she brings is a massive international perspective, a global perspective on retail. And so today's episode, we're going to be talking about retail from a global standpoint, retail leadership from a global standpoint. But more importantly, we're going to learn a lot more about Paula and her upbringing in Brazil and how that has impacted who she is, the person that she is, and the leader that she is today. So thank you for being here with Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy. Let's go ahead and get started.
Welcome to Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy, where we go well beyond the corporate playbook to unpack major opportunities, hidden challenges, and critical issues that senior retail leaders face every day. So let's get started right now.
Okay, so Paula, I got to tell you, I've been extremely excited about speaking with you, and I know, most times, when people start to talk to you, they want to go right to the retail stuff. Listen to me, we are going to cover that, and we're going to cover your amazing podcast, which is something I listen to on the regular. It has changed my perspective on a lot of different areas, but I want to start. I want to start with you and your home country of Brazil. You did a post a while back, and I think it was at the VTech Day, and it was at the end of the event, and the energy was when from that video that you shared, and what you said, and this is what you said. You said, Brazil is just different. It's just different. The energy in Brazil is just different. Can you talk a little bit about sort of your upbringing, all the different things? You can take as long as you want to talk about you and everything that you've experienced in Brazil. And because I wanted to start there because I believe it's going to tell people and explain a lot about where you are right now in your journey.
Absolutely. So there are two Brazils for me. One when I was living there, and one after I left. So when when I was there, like that was the normal things for me, right? Like so I wasn't paying attention on how big our trees are or how fun it is to be around us or and then after I left, I realized like, oh, this is Brazil. I think like this shift of perspective when you leave a country is when we actually realize what the country is about. So yeah, I grew up in Brazil, my family in a very good family. We were not rich, but my parents could afford good education. I did start learning English at some point in my education, but I studied economics. I went to college, so going to college was always something that I knew I was gonna do. Like it wasn't something like, oh, maybe, which is very common to the rest of the country. So I was very privileged in my upbringing, let's say. So I studied economics because I wanted to go to banking. I was like, no, I was made for finance. Look at me. I want to make a lot of money. Yeah, I don't mind working 80 hours a week and etc. Turns out that I hated it. I did work for 6 years. That was just not natural. I was forcing something. I was trying to understand and like I was just not a good fit. But I knew that, I don't know, I studied so hard for it, right? So I needed to grow in my career, maybe in another bank, maybe if I go to JP Morgan, maybe if I go to another, something like that, I'll be better. I'll like it more. But I couldn't speak English fluently, which made me like, you know what? Why don't I go to New York? Which is what I did.
Good. Excellent. I hope my city welcomed you with open arms.
It wasn't so open. I remember when I arrived, I was like, well, I can barely, I thought I knew how to speak English, but I was definitely not communicating well. Like when how are you? I am
Right.
fine. And you? And then there's not the, oh, good, oh, good, oh, good. That you're like, I don't know. Is this a question? Is this an answer? And I remember my first meal in New York when I
Mm,
arrived to live there. I had visited before as a tourist, but living is different.
right.
And I was living in Bay Ridge to
Okay. Yeah.
start with,
Yeah.
so South Brooklyn. And I remember I was like, well, I'm hungry. There's a McDonald's in the corner. I'm just gonna go there because McDonald's is universal, right? I can say
Right.
number two,
Right.
please, and they will get it.
Yes.
So I was like, number two, please. And she said, to say to go. And I was like, excuse me? To say to go. And I was like, I don't know. I got my wallet. Like, how much? She's like, to stay or to go, miss? And I was like, oh. So that was my first meal in New York. And I
Yeah.
fell in
Sounds
love,
like New York.
obviously. And I stayed for 5 years. Exactly. I spent 2 years, 3 years actually. No, 2 years studying English in New York.
Mm,
So it was very hard for me to, I don't know, to be able to communicate. I communicate a lot. I work in communications, right? Like it was very hard to not make myself understandable, my ideas, everything that I had in my mind. I was so smart and I couldn't express it, you know?
right. Right. Right.
So it was 2 years going to school full time to learn how to speak English. Then I studied marketing and then I had the opportunity to work. So that was interesting.
You're listening to Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy.
So it's so funny. There's a parallel in my life. So I went to undergrad for accounting, and back I'm a little old, and back then it
I'm
was the
so
Big
sorry for you.
Six.
I don't
And
know who makes this decision.
I did, I did because you know what? Because it was back then. It was the Big Six, in accounting, and so this is the mid '90s. So I'm dating myself, but you can actually make pretty decent money if you went back to New York City and and got into accounting. I hated it. I lasted 6 months in the accounting field, so I understand your pain when you talk about you going into finance and you're like, okay, this isn't it for me, and then I stumbled upon into retail. So you went from banking into the retail space. Could you talk a little bit about, that transition in your life?
That transition took a while. It wasn't so straight up, right? Like I wish I had a good story to tell. Yeah, like and then I got a job on the sales floor and I was there in retail, but my visa expired in New York. I left. I left and decided to travel the world. I was like, you know what? I can do remote work. Now I speak English. Uh, so I was decided to travel the world. So I was spending like 2 weeks in a country, 3 weeks in the other one month
Mm,
in the other one. I did like 18 countries like that. And until COVID. That was easy for me. So like I was working a lot with events. I was doing the tour of many DJs. I've never thought about going to retail
mm,
um, until 2020. So 2020 was a year that all the events were over. I wasn't doing any tours anymore, no festivals. What was I gonna do with my life? I have no idea. So I looked for a job and I found it with Rethink Retail. They're a media company that covers
mhm,
retail.
mhm.
And I found it super cool. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, maybe I was made for this. That finally, like, I found a job that I was like happy to be awake to do it. Like I was seeing my impact. I was meeting people that were worth having in my life and etc. So I fell in love with the industry like that,
Yes.
out of luck, I would say.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and I'm so glad we're talking about this because, right before we came on, we talked about you said, "Steve, I'm not a retail leader. That's not my role, and that's not my perspective." And I appreciated that, and I think that's exactly why I wanted to have this conversation with you is because as a ex retail, person, now in a different space, but still in the retail space, you bring a completely different perspective on retail. So when working with rethink retail, could you talk a little bit about what are some of the things that you learned or that were surprising to you when you actually moved into this retail space? Because, you go from being a shopper, right? Because you're stylish. I already know. I see you. I see you at Shop Talk, so you're stylish. So I know you like to shop. You're probably shopping before you got to Rethink. Could you talk a little bit about that transition from being a shopper to actually moving into that retail, industry
Yeah.
space?
I think all of us that work in the industry have done this transition, right? We were just shoppers, and suddenly we're discussing how shoppers should feel and how we can better serve them. I think I had no idea how much technology was involved in selling something in a store, or selling something online, or how integrated things had to be. For me, it was just there. Like, oh, I knew what a good experience was. I knew what a bad experience was. I had no idea why. And getting in the industry and speaking with so many technologists and so many leaders and trying to understand their struggles and what they're doing to improve customer experience and etc. opened my mind to, oh wow, the retail ecosystem is a lot bigger than I imagined.
Mhm.
And that kept me pushing, like, I want to know more. Like, and I think like that's where my curiosity got in play, because I was very curious.
Mm, mm,
And
mm.
so I started asking more questions. And that's why I have a podcast, but
Oh,
we're not talking about it. But like,
oh
I'm
yeah.
curious. I want to know more about how things work and why, and what are the best ways to improve. I don't know. Like, I think that was the most surprising thing. Also, like, how nice people are in retail.
Mm,
I think
mm.
our industry is the nicest. I mean, for someone that came from finance,
Yeah.
you were in accounting.
Yes.
You were in accounting. For someone that came from finance, it's just like nice people. I think most of them came from the sales floor. They were there serving people,
Yeah.
like being there for the people. And I think that transcends the whole industry. So that's what
No,
I
I
love.
agree with that. I completely agree with that. I know I'm biased, but I love our industry. I love it. One of the areas that, I definitely want to get your perspective on is because, of course, I'm here in America. And, America, we feel like we invented retail and that we're the best at it and that no one can compare it to how we do things, right? And this is from a completely American centric, perspective. But you have a very global perspective, right? You know what? I just want to be your assistant because every time I see you, you're traveling. So after this interview, I'm gonna submit my resume so that, I could just like, hang out with you. Um
We would love to have you. Please, you're hired.
Excellent. Here we go. End of the interview. End of the interview. Um, when you travel around, and of course you spent a lot of time here in the States, but when you travel around and you think about, sort of this global perspective of retail, um, what are some of the things that sticks out compared to America, compared to sort of the rest of the world, right? Because my audience is it's probably 80% American, 20%, international. So, but I think they need to learn and understand that.
That's a very interesting question, because it varies a lot, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. I think compared to Brazil, where I come from, I think we are very like China. We are very content oriented. So
Mhm.
we very focus on the the Instagram story of the brand, how the brands engage on social channels. Every brand, everyone has a podcast. Like, Brazil is the country that most listens to podcasts. So
Yes,
it's
100%.
yeah.
Yes, they are.
And it's the second one for live commerce after China. So you see, like, we engage a lot with brands. Like, if I had a podcast that was in Portuguese, I'm sure it will have like 3 times my audience, because people like to comment, to share, to like, and this is the same with brands. So this is something that I found very different compared to the US. Another thing that I think in the US was not anymore. I think it changed, but like, my first shock was going to a CVS, which is a pharmacy
Mm,
for
mhm.
your health, and they were selling cigarettes. I was like, what? And And also, I don't know, the way Americans shop compared to where I came from, and that was also a big shock, was like going to Walmart and seeing people buying 5 liters of like a gallon of orange juice. I was like, who
Mhm.
drinks a gallon of orange juice? It's like buying big portions, I think, because you have bigger houses, you have how we storage it, so you can you can see some of these small differences. So in Europe, for example, what I've been to for the last 5 years is everybody goes shop every like goes to do the grocery every 3 days. Everything's organic, so you have to eat every 3 days to have something fresh in your fridge. So like that's something that you notice. And I think also Europe has a good way to tell stories in stores, which I
Mm.
don't see much in the US.
Mm. Give me an example of that because that's because you actually alluded to that earlier. You talked about content and you talked about engaging with the brand. So that actually alludes to what you just talked about. Telling the story. Do you have any examples that you can share?
I think like if you think about all the luxury brands, they have a specific story that they tell, right? So like we're
Mm.
talking about LVMH or Valentino or whatever, they tell the heritage story or something. You belong to something royal, but that's very specific because it's luxury. But you have, and that's an example I use every time. Like people that listen to me in other interviews, they might be like, "Oh, here we go. She's gonna be talking about this brand again." Is there's this cosmetic brand called Rituals? It's like it's like the Body Shop. They have like cream, soap, things like that for your body, for your house, candles, you know.
Mm.
But they have this store in Amsterdam. It's a Dutch brand called House of Rituals, which has it's a four-story store where okay, it's a store, a super nice store where you engage with everything. They have iPads, it's easy to process. You
Yes.
have like
Yes.
it's super engaging in terms of experience. But at the third and fourth floor is just services. Like you actually go to a spa. You have a spa for the body in one floor and a spa for the mind in the other floor. But it's I am a huge spa fan and I've never seen the things they have there in another spa. So like it's very unique,
Yeah.
you know? And every time that I go there, they have a different offer. I was like, oh, I need to try this hydro massage. I need to try this, you know? So this is a way, for example, that I can engage with a brand that I haven't had anything similar in the US, for example. But it's really like, oh, I want to go and hang out at a store for a while. I literally spend all the time that I go to Amsterdam, I spend 5, 6 hours in this store. So
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
one
no,
example.
that's a great example. Actually, in our mutual friend, Ian Scott, actually, I think I want to say it was early this year or sometime last year. He visited that store, and also Jack Stratton, our good friend too. They both visited that store. I don't think they did at the same time, but they just raved about rituals. Like every time they go to Amsterdam, I think they always post about that store. They're like, I gotta go in there. I gotta go in there. I'm like, okay, next time, Jack, get a facial treatment, or something. I'm gonna make sure he gets one of
Now
those.
I got a brain massage. Really recommend it.
Oh, see, now
See
you,
things that you
yeah.
don't see in other places. Where else can you get a brain massage? You can go to the ritual store and do it. Isn't it
I get
amazing?
Yeah,
Right.
it is amazing. I actually need that. I need that right now. Let's
Yeah.
let's let's talk about you mentioned curiosity. You mentioned curiosity, and I love that word. I love that word. And it's that curiosity that drove you to start what I feel. And I don't have any production or executive producer credits on your podcast, but it is one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. You've interviewed once again, one of our good friends, Steve Dennis, but like your podcast with Yuri Levine, founder of Ways, that one, I immediately after that podcast, I went and bought his book and read it, and I don't know how many people I've shared it with, from in the entrepreneurial space. So your podcast has definitely influenced me and other people. Could you talk a little bit about how that the creation of that podcast has started, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the interviews.
Absolutely. So I worked with Rethink Retail, which is an American media company, and I was responsible to make the brand more global through partnerships and content and etc. Um, I felt there was a bit of resistance. That's not on them. It's like a bit of resistance from, I don't know. Like there's so much to talk about the US. Why would we talk about a small branding somewhere else? You know.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
I felt the lack of one place to discuss all things, like global perspectives. I think like you have amazing shows about UK, amazing shows about a specific country, amazing shows about many places, but like nothing global. And our episode tomorrow, for example, is gonna be our guest from the sixth continent. So we covered the whole globe in 1 year, which is
Oh,
very
that's awesome. That's awesome.
nice. Yeah, I have my camera has AI, so it keeps
Oh,
switching.
that's good. That's awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, this is gonna be
That's okay.
moving.
That's all right. We'll fix that in post.
Yeah. So I wanted to create something global. I'm very good. You have to, at some point in your life, you have to realize what you're good at, what
Yeah.
you're naturally good at. What's your talent? And my talent is I can live cross culturally super easy. I navigate through cultures easily. For me, it's not a big deal to talk to someone in France or someone in China, to someone, like I assimilate these cultures easily.
Mhm.
And another talent that I have is that I'm very good in networking. And that's something I had no idea I was until I realized that many people can do it. I was like, well, why not? Just go and ask, go and talk. And they're like, no, what? Like, I was like, well, it just came to me. I'm like that. So I decided to create Offbounds. I was like, I can leverage my network. I truly believe that something that we are discussing in the US can be learned from someone that did something
100%.
similar in Sweden, or an innovation that is happening in Australia that is driving something different in Spain. Like I think we can learn from other people, from other perspectives, from other case studies that haven't been discussed in our day to day. So that's why I
Yeah.
created Off Bounds.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think when I hear you talk about the story, we were talking about like compared to the States, and when you talk about the story and engaging in the content, I hear that in your podcast. I don't know if you know this or not. I hear you bringing out the story of the brand. I hear you bringing out the ideas that a lot of people don't necessarily ask or potentially think about, which is one of the reasons why I enjoyed, because I love the story, but I love the questions and your ability to bring out, you know, I'm going to go back to the Yuri Levine one, because I don't know how many times I watched it. It's probably the one I probably watched at least maybe 10 times and was taking notes the entire time.
Thank you
To
so
watch,
much. Yeah, that was
yeah,
a great one. I left with a lot of like, wow, that impacted me too. Especially as an
yeah,
entrepreneur, like I was like, oh wow, yeah. What is my
yeah.
product market fit? And now I'm I keep
Oh,
thinking.
oh, oh, I mean, when a lot of a lot of the things that he was speaking about. So anybody who's listening to this, I'm definitely will leave a link in the description for that, not just for your podcast, but specifically for that one. So, um, your curiosity when you think about asking, different questions, is there a strategy? Because I think curiosity sometimes, I think people overthink, right? And I think they're like they write everything down and they do this and that. When you think about sitting down with some of these really, change makers within our industry or within the world, they're not just in retail space, but they're in the world, right? What is sort of your thought process? Because I think leaders who are listening to this can actually learn a lot from your level of curiosity when you interview people.
Well, first I have to research a lot about the guest. So I have to read every LinkedIn post. I have Leah from my team who does a very good job. She put everything in a PowerPoint for me to see all TikToks talking about the brand, all the content. She's very good. She's also very curious. That's why she's a good fit for Offbounds. And she brings everything to me, and then I read news. Everything So my curiosity starts when I'm researching. Like,
Mhm.
what do they mean that they're going to see? What, like, like that's when I start thinking of my
Mm.
questions. I send the guests some questions in advance, but when we're talking like we're doing here, there's also some follow-up questions that arise. And yeah, but first is really at least 48 hours of research into
Yeah.
the guests and the company.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. What interview? Okay, I've talked about the Yuri Levine one, but I'm gonna have you pick because I was being selfish of me because that's one of my favorites. And I know they're all give the answer. They're all my children. I love them all equally. But what episode sort of sticks out to you, or maybe a lessons learned from one of the episodes that you were like, oh my gosh, that lesson from that episode sort of changed me and my perspective on something.
I have so many.
I know.
Maybe
Pick as
all
many
of
as you
them
want.
have
Pick as many
something
as you
that
want.
I was like,
Pick as many as you want.
wow.
Pick as many as you want. Go for it. We got time.
Yeah, well, there's one episode that I left really impacted was the one with from the sardine store. I don't know if you've watched this one,
Yes, yes.
but it's super interesting to see a verticalized business. And I was like, why verticalized? Like, why does it make any sense? He was like, we do because we own the story. And I
Yes.
was like, wow, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I sat back. I sat when he said. I sat back when they said that as well. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. Don't go finish. Such
Oh
a great
yeah,
story.
this one is incredible in the way like I was with a friend that was visiting Lisbon last week and I took her to another city, a small city. There was a guy playing violin in the store. Like you have this free concert and you feel so grateful that you buy a can of sardine, things like that. Uh it's really good. They do it very well. There's like for me it's a masterclass of branding.
Mm,
Um
mhm,
then I have, I think, all episodes about China because China is always a good discovery. I just went there, like, right? Like, I was there 3 weeks ago, and it was ridiculous how impressed I was. I was like, like, oh my god, this is how they do it. All the episodes about China, especially, I think the last one because I was there. We talked about luxury in China, and everybody's talking about the slowdown, fatigue. Nobody wants
mm,
luxury anymore, and etc. And being there really showed me that this is not the case. So things like that. Also, the episode that is going live tomorrow, and we are talking about November 26th. So it's
mhm,
about Atacadão.
mm,
It's about a cash and carry model. I do this because it's kind of different than Costco.
mhm,
Um,
mhm, mhm,
but it's like a cash and carry model where you can buy wholesale or retail. The consumer or the small businesses can go to this big store. There's a warehouse, and it exists in Brazil for 60 years. The concept was imported to Morocco 10, 15 years ago, and it was
mhm.
so successful that they just opened this year one in France. So it's a completely different model that is emerging in Europe. And this is something that is challenging everything. So this is something that challenges my perspectives too. And the perspectives of consumers and the perspectives of the industry. Should everybody be worried about this model? Because it is really cheaper than anything else that exists in France for the
Yeah.
consumers. So
Oh,
see, it's just so every day I learn something new.
oh, I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm actually excited about that episode. This question, okay, I got one or two more questions. And this question right here is going to be very selfish of me because I want to know this because, I do a lot of coaching and training, whether it's people in the States or people abroad. If you were to design, I think I gave you this question. If you were to design sort of this executive, um, leadership program for retail leaders. Because part of it is very, once again, where we have this Americanized ideas around retail. I wanted to pick your brain about something. How do you create something that's going to be more global from an executive retail leader standpoint? What are some of the things that you would think about making sure that you want to include in that process?
It's hard to say because that could be I would say travel as much as you can, but I think
Mm.
that really opens your mind, and I really think you cannot be global if your leadership isn't global.
You're listening to Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy.
If your leadership thinks narrowly, that is going to transmit to the rest of the team. I think you have to expand. Everybody has to expand the mindset, and I think I don't know. I would suggest everyone to travel, but that's like how much can you do that, right? But like go to retail shows. Like why are you going just to NRF? Go to Euroshop, see how people are doing there. Go to Shop Talk Europe. Go to Shop Talk Fall. I don't know. Like expand. Try to meet people from other places. How they do. Ask questions, and then how you trans. I think once the leadership is there, thinking and listen to Off Bounds. Is there?
Definitely,
But
definitely.
yeah, but like when the leadership is there, aligned with everything that is happening around the world, that they're informed, that's gonna like go through the whole company. I think it should be part of the culture of the company to expand, to travel, but to really expand the mindset of everybody to become more curious globally. Does it make
Yeah.
sense?
No, I know, I agree, and I think that's and I always think that's, it's so it's interesting and it's hard and also kind of like upsetting because when I see a lot of companies and you see this where some companies fail, whether it's their expansion ideas when they go abroad and they don't take in that curiosity. I'll give you a great example. Here's a great example. So when I was in grad school, one of our capstone classes was around actually expanding an American company into Mexico. And so I had, of course, the American perspective of like, hey, why don't we just buy a company that does something very similar, and we'll move our capabilities over there, and bada bing, bada boom, we're done. Thank God I actually had a international sort of class, and they were like, no, I don't necessarily think that that's the right way of doing it, Steve. And what it did for me, and this is why I asked that question, is this is very similar to your answer, is that world perspective or worldview opened up my eyes to like, there's more than one way for us to do this. There's more than one way for us to
Exactly.
do this. So I'm sorry, go ahead. You're gonna say something.
And like I know our businesses when they want to expand to country X, are they putting the right people there, or they're just sending someone from their headquarters there? Like they have to have their leadership must understand that culture more than anything. The leadership that is gonna be in that country. That's why so many brands have Levi's have a CEO for China. Starbucks has a CEO for China. Like you have to have that expertise too, and you have to listen to them.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
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 if you're not
yeah.
like, oh, this is how we do here in the US, like, well, this is not how it works here in China.
No, no, not at all, not at all.
Yeah, especially China, there's a whole different ecosystem. So
Oh my gosh. Well, I wanna end this episode sort of where we started. I wanna go back to Brazil, and I want you to share with the leaders out there, probably one of your biggest lessons, that you've learned growing up there that has helped transition you into who you are today. Because I got to tell you, if this is your first time, my audience listening or hearing from Paula, you got to go to her LinkedIn. I'm going to make sure I have all of that information there too. But her podcast, but your post, and anytime you post about Brazil, like I think we talked about this. I've never been there before, but anytime you post about it, I always feel like I'm there. So I don't know if you know this or not, but it comes out. So could you share just a little bit some of your thoughts and about who you are, to the team, excuse me, to the audience as well?
yeah, so Brazil, I think what's so specific about Brazil is that we're super cool. Like you go there, yeah, like you go there, people are not complaining. Everybody has a smile on their face. Everybody's welcoming you, and that goes to the store associate, to everyone. Like they call you my love. Come here, my love. Take this. Do you need anything? Like it's so sentimental.
Mm,
Everything is
mm.
so
I love that
emotional.
word.
You know, we We have fun with emotion. If you ask any singer, any band, where is the best crowd they ever had, is in Brazil. Like, we express emotions a lot, and that goes into everything, for the good and for the bad. But yeah, I think I express emotions. I think that's
Mm,
something I learned in my culture, that people welcomes me everywhere because, I'm here, I'm genuine. I'm like smiling not because of anything. Once I was in Romania and this guy stopped me saying something in Romanian. I was like, "Excuse me, I don't speak English." He was like, "I knew it. You couldn't be a Romanian smiling." They didn't understand why I was smiling. I just smile because that's where I came from. This is what we do. And I think that was I think there are so many Brazilians, like the president of Pandora that have been to my podcast. He's Brazilian. The VP of e-commerce of PepsiCo in Europe, he's
mhm,
Brazilian. I
mhm.
think we all take this emotion into business, and
Ooh.
I think that's a differentiator somehow.
That's a whole nother podcast episode about taking your emotions into the business. I want to thank you so much for being here, and for being on Retail Leadership with Seaworthy. Like, this is you have made my year. I've followed you for this sounds creepy, but I followed you on your your
Virtually.
virtually. Yes. Virtually. Everybody get that, please? Virtually. Let's just make sure we clean this up, right? But no, I love what you post. I love what you're about. I love what you share, and I know my audience is going to get so much out of this conversation. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Excellent, excellent.